The movie opens with Young, a man clearly on edge from the outset. His day is marked by a series of frustrations, ending in an especially stressful errand to pick up his godfather. As he is coming back from his errand, through the bustling city streets of Hong Kong, the dashboard music only exacerbates his agitation. Upon arriving at the designated location, Young's fragile composure is shattered when a girl comes to park near the restaurant. He goes to ask if she would like to dine in, and the girl, who is busy with her phone, dismisses him with a shrug. There, the girl's incessant ringtone irritates him to no end. The sound grates on his nerves until he snaps, losing control in a moment of sheer rage. Without thinking, he snatches the phone from the girl and flings it across the road, watching it shatter into pieces. Angry, she shouts at Young, but seeing his livid expression, thinks against it. The petrified girl zooms off, but Young wants to harm her more as he pursues her with a chair. He's halted by a friend, Fatso, who grabs him from behind and tries to calm the abrasive man's nerves. Amid his turmoil, there is only one thing that can bring Young back to a state of calm. It is a particular song by an unknown artist. This melody has an almost magical effect on him, soothing his frayed nerves and bringing a sense of peace. Later, the night's events take an even darker and more perplexing turn when Young returns home. While the poor man is expecting a moment of respite, he is instead confronted with a strange sight. There is a suspicious Tide sack lying around. Upon opening it, he is shocked to find a girl, bound and gagged, struggling in desperation. Her eyes are tied up, and she is full of fear. As soon as he opens her gag, she begins screaming for help. Young is thrown into a state of confusion and panic. He has no idea who the girl is or how she ended up in his home. And most disturbingly, who is responsible for this? As Young grapples with these questions, the tension mounts. Just great, like his night couldn't get any better. Now he has a mysterious girl who refuses to be quiet for company. Amidst the chaos and confusion of finding the girl tied up in his home, Young's attention is drawn to a mysterious tag hanging from the ceiling. It turns out to be a message from someone named Wang, who turns out to be some kind of an acquaintance. Young wastes no time and dials Wang's number, demanding an explanation for why the girl was left in his care. However, Wang's response only adds to Young's frustration. The mysterious man claims to be preoccupied. Brushing off Young's inquiries, he instead instructs him to take care of the girl. Now burdened with an unexpected responsibility, Young is thrust into a role of becoming a caretaker to a stranger. The girl's presence disrupts his routine and forces him to confront feelings of discomfort and uncertainty. Sighing, he rushes off to take a shower. After coming out, Young lets his guard down, forgetting for a moment the stranger in his midst. However, his moment of relaxation is shattered when he finds the girl seated before him, blindfolded but startlingly present. With a sense of panic, Young scrambles to cover himself, hastily wearing his clothes as he becomes overcome with a sudden shyness. Afterwards, when he hears the girl mumbling about how she hasn't eaten in almost 10 hours, he feels pity for the girl and takes on the task of feeding her. He makes her a simple meal of noodles and provides her with water. Young feeds her as she hungrily devours the food. He watches, feeling a mix of irritation and sympathy. His solitary life has been upended most unexpectedly and uncomfortably. His only consolation is the hope that this ordeal will be short-lived and that the girl will be gone by the next day. The next day, Wang barges into Young's apartment, his presence as disruptive as ever. He's on the phone with Perry, Chow's boyfriend, demanding that Chow, the Tide girl, scream so Perry can hear her distress. Chow, not needing further instruction, lets out a piercing scream. However, the situation takes a twist as Wang demands $10 million from Perry, giving him 3 days to deliver the ransom. The person on the other end of the line isn't Perry, but Miss Chung, Perry's manager. Chung informs Wang that Perry and her are in Prague for a commercial shoot, making it impossible to deliver the money within the stipulated time. Wang's anger flares, but Chow interjects, explaining the situation and buying them some time. Chung, sensing the severity of the situation, ups the ante by promising $12 million if Wang waits for their return. The promise of an extra $2 million catches Wang's attention. His demeanor shifts, greed overtaking his initial frustration. He agrees to Chung's terms and abruptly ends the call. Meanwhile, Young, who has been observing this chaotic exchange, voices his concerns. He warns Wang that they are now engaging in kidnapping, a crime that could land them in jail for up to 10 years. Wang attempts to justify their actions, revealing more about Perry. He is a budding singer who makes $30 million a year. Wang tries to convince Young to stay on board with the plan, explaining that they owe a person named Tony $4 million and could use the ransom money to settle their debt. Young, however, remains resistant, unwilling to become complicit in a crime. With no other choice left, Wong expresses his frustration and jealousy. He laments that Perry, whom he considers an inferior singer and less attractive than himself, earns millions while he has been overlooked by the world. This, he argues, is merely a way of getting their fair share in an unjust world. Young, albeit reluctantly, agrees to continue with the plan but sets his conditions. No one must be harmed, and he doesn't want the girl to stay with him. Wong, however, insists that Young's secluded fish raft apartment is the perfect place to keep her hidden. With a heavy heart, Young realizes he is now embroiled in a dangerous game, one that blurs the lines between right and wrong, and his life of solitude is disrupted for good. The next day, Chow complains of a severe bellyache, claiming she desperately needs to use the toilet. Reluctantly, Young picks her up and carries her to the bathroom, dropping her inside before stepping outside to give her some semblance of privacy. Unbeknownst to Chow, Young is watching her through a glass window from the outside. Inside the bathroom, Chow discovers a blade and begins the arduous task of cutting the ropes binding her hands. She struggles with the blade. With a mixture of fascination and wariness, Young watches as she manages to free herself. Feigning ignorance, Young re-enters the house and approaches the bathroom door. When Chow claims to be finished, he opens the door for her. Seizing what she believes to be her moment of opportunity, Chow lunges at Young with a blade. However, Young anticipates her move, and she misses her target, stumbling and falling to the ground. Chow, realizing her escape attempt has failed, immediately pleads for mercy. Her defiance is replaced with desperation as she begs Young not to harm her. Recognizing her vulnerability, Chow negotiates with Young, offering to be useful around the house in exchange for more humane treatment. Young, exasperated with her shouting and screaming, agrees to a compromise. He allows her to clean and do the dishes, but not without taking precautions. He chains her to an anchor to ensure she remains under control, while granting her a degree of freedom within the confines of her tasks. Later, whilst cleaning, Young hears Chow singing a very familiar tune. When he asks if she wrote it, she doesn't deny it and says it's unfinished. Though the song to her hasn't got the numbers and engagement she would have liked when she posted it online 2 years before, Young is in utter disbelief that the very song that's therapeutic to him was written by the very person he holds hostage. She goes on to tell him how her net name is Hit Girl, and how her song only got a single download and liked by someone named Little Fairy. When Chow begins to request for a change of clothes, the little fairy sitting on the sofa gets startled, but soon settles down when he confirms that his identity is not out of the box yet. As evening falls, they sit down for dinner, eager to understand how Chow had been kidnapped. Young listens intently as Chow recounts the harrowing experience. She narrates how it all happened last night. She was out buying from a grocery store. Outside the store, Wong was involved in a violent confrontation with a group of menacing thugs who were demanding repayment of a debt. With blood trickling from his nose, Wong had entered the store and had seen Chow at the counter. Then his eyes had wandered to a nearby magazine, and the idea to kidnap the famous singer's girlfriend, who happened to be in front of him, had struck. Chow had seen through his sinister plan and bolted out of the store. However, despite her rush, Wong managed to catch up with her and kidnap the poor girl. Back in the fish raft, after narrating her kidnapping story, Chow asks if she would be able to go back home before the end of this month, since she had participated in a contest to officially release her song. However, it doesn't seem as if she would be able to. Moments later, the poor woman who can't get a break begins to experience her period cramps, and they come to realize the need for some womanly necessities. The next day, Fatty comes to the place with shopping bags and finds the two busy at the table. Chow quickly takes her package, and Young helps her to the washroom with the anchor. Soon they hear a thud and find Chow passed out in there. As Young goes to fetch medicine, unable to accept her fate, Chow makes a desperate attempt to deceive them and escape. Outside, due to a misstep, Chow plunges into the water. Her struggles become increasingly frantic, and soon she is fighting for her life. Initially, Young watches Chow's struggle from the shore, convinced that it's just another one of her ploys for freedom. But as reality sinks in and Chow's desperate gasps for air grow weaker, Young's concern transforms into a frantic rush to save her. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, the man dives into the water to rescue Chow. Luckily, he manages to pull her limp body to safety, her skin pale and her breath shallow. Faced with the grim reality of Chow's relentless determination to escape, Young secures her to a table, hoping against hope that she won't try to escape again. However, before they can fully process the situation, Young receives a distressing phone call. It turns out that Wong has been abducted. Poor Young can't seem to catch a break anymore as he keeps getting pushed beyond his limits. Quickly, Young and Fatty board a boat and sail away to rescue Wong. Armed with a bag that appears to contain the ransom money, they confront the kidnappers, only to reveal that it holds nothing but trash, catching them off guard. Taking advantage of this, Young launches into action, fighting tooth and nail to free Wong from his captors. Despite the odds, Young manages to get Wong into the car and attempts to make a desperate escape while taking Tony hostage. However, their hopes are dashed as they find themselves trapped in a tight end, with Tony's ruthless gang closing in on them. In a flurry of violence, the car is battered and broken. Cornered and outnumbered, Young, Fatty, and Wong find themselves at the mercy of Tony, who demands his money with a menacing glare. Desperate, Wong pleads for leniency, offering to pay even more than they owe in exchange for their lives, as they have a superstar's girlfriend hostage and would use her ransom money to settle the debt. Tony begrudgingly agrees to give them 1 week to come up with the additional funds. Back in the raft, getting inspired by her surroundings, Chow composes a song. It's night and Young returns home. He's badly injured, and Chow offers to help him treat the wounds. She also promises to not try to escape anymore. She helps him treat the wound, and then Young plays the music she had recommended to him for insomnia, and it does help him fall asleep. The next day, Young wakes up to a commotion Chow has stirred up. She tries to remember a melody from her dreams and becomes deeply engrossed in her music-making process. Recognizing her need for a proper instrument, he sets out to find her a piano. Young manages to procure a piano, though it's far from perfect. The instrument is old and worn, its keys still bright white, but they don't look like they work, and its body bears the scars of years of use. Nevertheless, it is functional, and Chow is grateful for Young's effort. As Chow begins to play the instrument, Young watches, touched by her skill. It's quite fascinating that while Young was out securing the piano, Chow had an opportunity to escape, but she chose to stay. Later that evening, while they are having dinner, Chow confesses to knowing that he is the one who downloaded her song. Just then, Young sees the inflatable boat beside a table and wonders why she didn't escape. The poor girl innocently replies that he was going to bring her a piano. Since she probably won't be able to go back home, she requests him to at least bring her recorder so she can record the song. The next day, Young breaks in at Perry's apartment to steal Chow's recorder. He finds the recorder, but then Perry and Chung return home. Quickly, Young goes into hiding and shockingly witnesses Perry and his manager sharing an intimate moment. Dumbstruck, Young returns and hands over the voice recorder to Chow. The woman seems to have written a song that needs a male voice too. Thus, she convinces Young to lend his voice to her song. However, their initial attempt reveals Young's voice lacks the vigor, breath control, and pitch precision needed to bring Chow's melody to life. Determined to overcome these hurdles, Chow sets Young on a path of self-improvement, urging him to kick his smoking habit and dive into exercises like swimming to refine his vocals. On the other hand, Chung and Perry escalate their search for Chow by involving the police. Wong calls Perry to inquire if the ransom is ready, and Perry reassures him. He then comes back to the raft with Fatso so that they can go to celebrate with Young, unaware of the police tracking them. Wong also makes sure to instruct Chow to erase any memory of their existence once she's set free. Now, since Young has to, reluctantly, leave with his friends for a party with their godfather, he ushers Chow inside under the pretense of tying her up. However, he doesn't tie her up. This comes as a surprise to Chow. Maybe it's just Young giving Chow the benefit of the doubt, or maybe he doesn't see a need for tying up his studio partner anymore. While at the party, Young's mind is not in it, as he feels uneasy. The room is filled with laughter and chatter, but he can't shake the nagging feeling of worry. Suddenly, he receives a notification on his phone from the weather forecast. It states that a severe rainstorm is imminent. Young's anxiety intensifies as he becomes increasingly concerned about Chow, who is alone at his fish raft house. Young glances around the room, his friends oblivious to his inner turmoil. He decides he needs to leave and make sure Chow is safe. However, Wong, noticing Young's distracted demeanor, confronts him. Wong is upset that Young wants to leave, insisting that everyone is having a good time, and that Young is the only one looking as if someone has croaked. Wong reminds Young that their godfather hasn't arrived yet, and insists that he should stay a little longer to celebrate. As Young and Wong argue, the atmosphere grows tense. Their voices rise, attracting the attention of people around them. Just then, their godfather arrives, bringing a momentary halt to the conflict. The room erupts into cheers and well wishes for their godfather's birthday. The elderly man laughs merrily and announces that nobody is allowed to leave until they finish the booze. The friends laugh and cheer, but Young's heart sinks with every passing minute. Meanwhile, back at the fish raft house, the storm has unleashed its fury. Chow, alone and terrified, clings to whatever stability she can find. The wind howls, and the rain pounds relentlessly. The structure of the house groans under pressure. Glass shatters, furniture is upended, and the fish raft begins to sway dangerously with the force of the wind. The petrified girl notices the little plant that Young had worked hard to bring to life about to collapse and quickly grabs it. However, in the process, she herself falls under a huge cupboard that collapses on top of her. Young's concern grows unbearable. As soon as he can, he rushes home, driven by a mix of fear and urgency. Upon arriving, he is met with chaos. The house is in disarray, rain pouring in through broken windows, and furniture is scattered haphazardly. But none of this matters to Young. His sole focus is on finding Chow. In a panic, he calls out for her, his voice barely audible over the storm. He searches frantically, his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, he spots her feet protruding from under a fallen wooden cupboard. With a surge of adrenaline, Young lifts the heavy wood and pulls Chow free. Relief floods over him as he realizes she is okay, albeit shaken. However, soon his heart aches when he notices the small plant that she has been protecting all along. Their reunion is brief as the storm continues to wreak havoc on the fish raft. Objects are still falling, and the structure remains unstable. Young quickly assesses the situation and decides to use his body as a shield to protect Chow from the debris. The morning after the storm, as Chow begins to piece things back together, Young approaches her with a solemn expression. He asks her to stop working since it is time to go. He informs her that Wang is going to collect the ransom money, assuring her that once they have the money, she'll be free. Meanwhile, Perry, who seems as happy as the lark, has gathered the ransom money and is accompanied by police officers. His mind races with thoughts of his own safety and the safety of his money, which he never intended to hand over to the kidnappers. The police officer looks at his behavior and wonders if he is even worried about his girlfriend, who might be in grave danger right now. The boy snaps back, saying that he is worried about his safety too, and the police must make sure that his life and his money is safe once the ordeal is over. Just then, he receives a call from Wang, who instructs him to go to the quarry bay with the money. On the other hand, Chow and Young say their melancholic and unwilling farewell inside Young's car. As Perry arrives at the designated location, Wang watches from a rooftop, his eyes fixed on the scene below. Unbeknownst to Wang, the police are discreetly trailing Perry, ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. Perry places the money in the recycle bin as instructed by Wang. Then the kidnapper commands Perry to drive away. Seemingly unbothered, and without a care in the world, Perry drives away. Meanwhile, the police maintain their discreet surveillance. Suddenly, a figure clad in a face mask, hat, and sunglasses darts towards the recycle bin, snatching up a bag and swiftly making off. The police spring into action, hot on the heels of the mysterious figure. With a sense of urgency, they pursue the individual, closing in rapidly. However, their hopes are dashed when they apprehend the person, only to discover that the bag contains nothing but trash. It's a dead end, and they realize they've been led astray. Meanwhile, Fatso, unaware of the chaos unfolding around him, triumphantly retrieves the sack containing the actual ransom money. His smug demeanor falters momentarily as he revels in his success, but his moment of triumph is short-lived. As Fatso strolls down the street, clutching the bag of money tightly, his attention is diverted, and he fails to notice the bus hurtling towards him. In an instant, tragedy strikes as the bus collides with Fatso, sending him sprawling to the ground, the sack of money scattering into the air like confetti. The police, alerted by the commotion, rush to the scene, finding Fatso hurt and bleeding on the floor. Amidst the chaos, the precious ransom money lies scattered and forgotten. As Chow and Young anxiously await the return of Wang and Fatso, their anticipation turns to shock and dread when Wang arrives in a state of despair. His words hit like a hammer blow as he delivers the news. They've been discovered, and their only chance is to flee. As Wang's eyes land on Chow, his despair takes a darker turn. Grabbing a knife, he quickly gets out of the car to eliminate Chow and erase any witnesses. Young, horrified by Wang's suggestion, tries to reason with him, but Wang's desperation knows no bounds. Chow, realizing the danger she's in, clings to Young as they make a desperate escape. As they reach a crossroads, Young knows they can't stay together if Chow is to have any hope of safety. Despite his own injuries, he insists that Chow go on alone. Chow, torn between fear for her own safety and concern for Young, tries to tend to his wounds, but he refuses her help. Just then, 2 police officers arrive on the scene. Young relaxes and leaves her there, running off towards Wang. The police officers lead Chow away to safety and run off to find Young, who is nowhere to be found. However, they manage to find Wang. At the police station, Chow finds herself thrust into an interrogation. seated face to face with the police officers. The detective's questions come fast and relentless, probing for any shred of information that might lead to the apprehension of the remaining unidentified kidnapper. Chow, bewildered and frightened, insists that she knows nothing of any other accomplice. But when the detective produces a recording found on the fish raft, capturing the voice of another male, Chow's resolve begins to crumble. Stuttering, she struggles to find an explanation, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty. Feeling like a criminal under the detective's scrutiny, Chow demands to know why she's being treated this way when she's the one who suffered at the hands of her captors. With a sigh, the detective leads her to Perry, instructing her to rest and await further questioning. As she follows the detective's lead, Chow can't shake the feeling of unease that lingers in the air. Perry approaches and the detective leads Chow to him. He fleetingly asks if Chow is all right and then shrugs as she answers. As the woman holds his hand, he quickly brushes her off, saying that they should refrain from holding hands in public. The detective, being irritated by Perry's nonchalant behavior, senses an opportunity to expose Perry's secret affair. With a calculated move, the detective asks Perry about the woman who was in his bedroom last night, saying that she needs to talk with her. This news stuns Chow. Hurt and disillusioned, Chow feels a wave of despair wash over her as she processes this newfound information. Hurt and betrayed, the woman abruptly leaves the police station, her heart heavy with sorrow. However, Perry, driven by a sense of guilt and remorse, follows after her, desperate to explain himself. He acknowledges his wrongdoing and offers an apology as he reveals his need for a separation between them. Chow, consumed by a mix of anger and heartache, can't bring herself to process what is happening. He was doing all that for so long. She watches as he leaves her standing alone on the desolate streets. Meanwhile, Young remains missing, his whereabouts a mystery. Despite their best efforts, the search on the fish raft yields no clues to his location. As the music festival competition commences, Chow's determination to perform the song she and Young created together burns brighter than ever. Unbeknownst to her, the police lurk in the shadows, anticipating Young's inevitable appearance, believing he wouldn't miss the chance to perform their song with Chow. True to their expectations, Young arrives. Despite his injuries, he joins Chow on stage, his passion undiminished. As they perform their song, Young's voice carries the weight of their shared experiences, each note infused with raw emotion. The detective immediately identifies him and calls her men to arrest, but no one is willing to do so. With no other choice, she herself comes running down, but she too is finally entranced with the music. The crowd is captivated by their performance, swept up in the beauty of their craft. As the performance ends, cheers and applause ring out. But amidst the celebration, tragedy strikes as Young collapses due to his still bleeding wound. An ambulance with the detectives and police swiftly whisks Young away, leaving Chow reeling with shock and fear. In the moments before he's taken away, Chow reminisces Young's kind words to her earlier. His heartfelt gratitude to Chow, expressing how her music breathed life and light into his darkest moments. He speaks of their bond with heartfelt sincerity, hoping for a future where they can meet again. All alone, Chow is left to grapple with a whirlwind of emotions. Sometimes later, she too visits Prague, yet the inspiration she thought she would get here remains elusive. To her, it was Young's voice that she was searching for, and nothing else. A voice that can touch people's hearts. 4 years have passed since the contest, but the impact of Young and Chow's music continues to reverberate through the lives of those who heard it. A newly released Young rides in a taxi. There, the driver looks at him through the rearview mirror and muses if he happens to be the Young from that contest 4 years ago. He says that his music played a pivotal role in his miraculous recovery. The stranger wonders Chow's current whereabouts and inquires if they'll put out more music. However, Young has no answers to these questions, as he never left Chow to visit him in jail. Young finally returns to his fish raft after so long. There, he is taken aback to find Chow waiting for him. Seeing him pleasantly surprised, Chow reminds him of his invitation for her to seek inspiration at the raft anytime. The two finally reunite after so long and finally look at each other with no worries and burdens tying them down.